Hey, welcome to this place on the internet. I talk about comic books. I'm a comic book creator, not a YouTuber, as is probably evident by the fact that I don't have a steady space like the guys with the glowing LED lights everywhere and all that shit. I am in the studio at the moment. This is why I haven't produced a video in a few days. I also traveled 13 hours into the future, which does not. You're not camera ready after that. So. I'm going to do a relatively low effort video in the respect that it's not an original concept. It is in answer to a question that I received regarding one of my other videos about the goals in 2024. And the questions from that have been really good, and I'd like you to keep them coming because when I'm jammed up and only got half an hour to make a video, this is a great help to me. So this one comes from Riley. Okay, so I've written a script for 4 issues of a miniseries with the intent of publishing, and I've never published a comic before. Okay, well, congratulations on this very large endeavor that you're undertaking. I've become reasonably chummy with some of the artists online that I think would be a good match. Given that this is my first work, I'm going to be fronting the money for the artist to work on this book. My questions would be: 1, what is a reasonable amount of money to budget for this? 4 issues, 32 pages apiece. I'm not hiring Jim Lee here, but a beginner to a journeyman artist who has done a few comics previously. 2, going the publisher route. Once you've got something completed, would you shoot editors at publishers that seem like a good match, a sample copy of the issues, and a pitch? I've done pitching for short stories in lit magazines, not sure if it's a similar process. Hopefully these aren't too remedial of questions. Thank you for what you're doing. Okay, so there's no such thing as a remedial question here because it's very rare that there's a right answer. And frankly, there might be people in the comment section, including artists in this case, who disagree very much with what I'm saying, and it would be good to get their perspective. So again, it's not too remedial. So let's start with your project. So you've written 4 issues. Okay, let me troubleshoot things that you haven't even asked me to troubleshoot for, like a fucking asshole. You know, when you go to somebody and you just want advice on one thing, and they're like, well, here's where. So first and foremost, your job at this stage in your career is going to be to incentivize co-creators and collaborators. Money seems like it would do it, you know what I mean? Because we all need money, but artists are not motivated solely by money, and you have to keep people's attention. You have to keep your co-creators' attention. If all you offer is money, I promise you, you're not going to get to those, 128 pages. You're going to go up against them getting other offers in the middle of your book. You're going to go up against life stuff. And really, let's say that you offer a reasonable amount of money. It's still not enough to live off of. So they have to be very dedicated to what you're doing. To that end, I suggest even if you've written the 4 issues, which is good, that's all practice, you have to enter a partnership with the idea that it's going to be collaborative. You have to sell that notion to your co-creator. You have to say, I've written these 4 issues because I was really excited about it. However, this is a roadmap, not a script. I do not expect you to be a visual transcriber because unless they're making an incredible amount of money, no artist really wants that. Even artists who do not want to involve themselves in the writing process necessarily, they still want the latitude to know that this is that their voice is going to be in the book, that it's not just following dictates from you, right? So I think that's important to just get out of the way. Next up, I think that the money thing is less your problem. As I said, it's going to be about keeping it's going to be about keeping people motivated. But let's get to the money because you asked. The least I've ever paid for pages is $50 a page. That's from a guy who has been published numerous times, who I love his work, but he works in a very fast, loose style that he understands is not part of the market. It's specific. I think that he could push it into a space where he owns it completely. It's probably obvious. I have a lot of respect for this guy's work, but he chooses not to do that. He makes a good living in art outside of comics. This is something he does when he wants to. That fella, $50 a page, and the most I've ever paid for pages is $375. I know that sounds absurd, but it was for a short project, four pages. That was from an absolute legend. That's from a guy that I don't even know how to if I was to list the 20 most important artists in comics, this fella I think would make the majority of our list. And the reason that he quoted me that was because that was his DC rate at that time, right? So, okay. Those are the extreme ends of things. You're not going to be paying less than that. You're not going to be paying, certainly, you're not going to be paying more than that. So what are you going to do? Okay. $100 a page. This might be akin to playing music. What's the least that you can pay an opening band that might not have any value to the show? They might not bring any money in terms of ticket sales to the show. However, there is baseline respect that you have to pay people. So, okay, $100. Let's say that that's what it is in comics. You got to understand that you're asking somebody to work 128 days of their life. How many work days in a year? I don't know, but you're asking somebody to work a year of their life at $100 a day. If you're W-9ing them, holy shit, it's just not a ton of money. Now, somebody who's living at home who has the ability to spend their time like that, and they see this as something that's moving their career forward, that person exists, and you could find that person maybe. You could also go to places where the U.S. dollar goes further. Certainly, there's a lot of Filipino artists. There's a lot of Southeast Asia. There's now Vietnamese artists that are in the mix. And you could go to South America, just places where the U.S. dollar goes further. For anybody that thinks that's exploitative, I don't know how to talk to you about markets. You have what you are able to afford, and you find the person who is able to do it for that amount of money. And sometimes that involves people's circumstances, or always involves people's circumstances. And places where the U.S. dollar goes further, that's the circumstance. So you could do that. There might be a language barrier, maybe not. It's also a frustration for many of us working in comics that some of the most brilliant artists out there are not interested in full-time comic work. Just is what it is. People are making money in different places. A lot of talented people out there that grew up in other fields and just don't have kind of the reason to make comics the center of their life. Maybe they're more into video games and they can find work there. Also there's just the simple matter, maybe they have a family to feed. These are all considerations, right? So finding that artist that you can get for $100, which would bring you to what, like 12.8 on the project maybe? 12.8 is not nothing. It's a lot of money, particularly when it's highly unlikely you're going to see a return on that investment unless you arrive at a publisher, for example, like Image, or you maybe get a rate after the fact or in advance of some type from a publisher. These are tough things. Your earliest work is I would count as a loss, but here's one way to look at it. 1 year I made $30,000. That's the most amount of money I made in that up until that time in my life. I was older than I should have been, I'm sure, but I made $30,000, and I was from a place where that was enough for an adult male. And you're starting your little career in life and all that bullshit. And I spent $10,000 on comic art, on trying to build my career. So a third of my income went to comics. Not everybody is able to do that. If you have children, if you have a mortgage, but I was at a stage in my life where rent was $300 and I had no commitments. That could be you, but if it's not, 12.8 is chunky, right? So if you're a man of means, then disregard what I'm saying. But I think that you should be willing to spend money on your future. And that's how I always saw it. The way that I would look at it actually is, if you own a pizza parlor, you need a cooler for the drinks. What are you going to do, not have a cooler? Are you going to be cheap on the cooler? Why? I thought you wanted a pizza parlor. So things cost money. Acknowledge that, but don't kill yourself. I mean, 12.8 is... so here's the problem. Okay, $13,000, you got that in 1 year? Do you have that available on hand? And the reason I say that is because if your artist is working full-time and can get that done in a year, will you have that money available to pay them? Or are you going to have to do 3 years of work with this person, and how do you ensure that that person is going to stay motivated during those 3 years? It's really hard. A lot of people spend a lot of money needlessly on projects that never go anywhere. Now, they're learning experiences, so that's great, but they never go anywhere because they're so stop-start in nature that by the time you're nearing the finish line, the one or both collaborators have moved on to different parts of their career and can't devote that amount of time to a project that probably will have no ROI, right? So this is not to discourage you. These are just things to consider. If I were you, I'd go in a different direction. I would maybe attempt to pitch, but I would probably start with something that you could conceivably self-publish, and that includes online. Let's say that you find an artist that you are really happy to collaborate with. Can your story be broken down into 6-page chunks? Little, almost anthology style, but something you can just put in a place where people will see it. This is the webcomics format. There's a lot of people who experience more success with webcomics. The problem is that you want to do eventually for print, and doing comic pages online sucks. So that's a problem too. But I think that you're going to have to either do the publisher hustle, where you try to find a small publisher for your work without investing all of that money up front, or you find a way to get it out to people and at least build interest and a base. But none of this is easy, and you might step on a landmine anywhere in this process, but it's going to be part of a learning experience. You have to bear that in mind. The failure is part of the success. That's just the way it goes. So, I don't know. Was that helpful at all? Let's say $100. That's for somebody that's early in their career, the least amount of money you're going to pay them, and $200 if you want somebody that has some experience and can give you their time in a professional way, where they're not going to necessarily be dragged off of the book by better offers. And if you really want to ensure that somebody goes nowhere else, and you got to overpay. And so I'd love to hear from artists if they think I'm shitting on them with that $100. This is a larger discussion, because there's different philosophies for how to get a book off at, say, for example, an Image, right, where both parties stand to benefit from a book that sells well. There's also the issue that there's a great number of small publishers who are only paying $100 a page. I know artists don't like to acknowledge that, but many or most of them have worked for those publishers at some point. $100 a page. So if you're able to offer something more interesting than that arrangement, maybe $100 a page is perfectly good for a number of artists who are early in their career, or as you said, are journeymen and haven't found their voice or their lane yet. So $100 a page, I wouldn't go lower than that unless you're finding a real partner, somebody who sees the future with you, owns 50% of what you're doing. That person, you can come to any arrangement in the world. And that artist is taking a huge gamble, may never see a dollar. But that's a different thing. You're going to have to decide what you want here. Give up some rights, probably should anyway, or hold it all, overpay, try to keep them involved when there's going to be a lot of different things pulling them in different directions. Not easy. I wish you the best of luck. Hit me if you have any more questions. I hope this was helpful at all.